Florida police claim that a father made a series of terrible decisions that culminated in him jumping from the driver's seat of his moving car with his wife and children still inside. This harrowing ordeal left him bloody and bruised, his family terrified, and law enforcement shaking their heads. We're going to sit down with a former Florida state attorney to talk about this bizarre alleged crime and the potential consequences. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Now, before we jump into this more, while I have you real quick, I gotta tell you about Upside. If you don't know what it is our sponsor. It is great. It is this app that gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas and groceries, and it is so easy to use. It's free, so I can use it when I pump my gas. I can use it when I go to a convenience store. I can use it when I get a bite to eat. And yes, this is real cash back. After you spend, money appears in your Upside account that you can transfer straight into your bank account. So here's what you do. You download the Upside app for free. You buy whatever you plan to purchase. You pay as usual with a debit or credit card. You file a claim in the app, and just like that, money back. So to find out how much you could save with Upside, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen and use our promo code SIDEBAR to get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. This all started with a 911 phone call from a child, okay? Albert Searcy and his family were driving along Highway 79 in Florida's Panhandle earlier this week when the dad of three and his wife started fighting with each other, okay? When the arguing and the yelling escalated to something physical, one of the three minor children in the back seat called 911. This is all according to the Washington County Sheriff's Office. Now, deputies claim that when Searcy realized that this girl had reached out to police, he hit her, struck her, took the phone away. Now, law enforcement was already en route to find them, and it seems Searcy would do just about anything to avoid them, including throwing himself out of the car. That's the allegation. To talk about this, to talk about what we could expect in this case, we'll talk about the charges, everything else, what could have resulted. I want to bring in friend of the show, former Palm Beach County State Attorney, Dave Aronberg, who I understand, Dave, you have a new Substack, right?
Hey, great to be with you, Jesse. Yes, I do. I'm finally doing the Substack thing. Dave Aronberg, a.k.a. the Florida lawman. Of course, there's always a Florida connection to everything. So, yes, I have my Substack. I post every day. And I even have my True Crime Tuesdays or True Crime Thursday. I'll have to figure out which of those T days to do it on. So thank you for plugging it, Jesse.
Can't you just do both days? Aren't you in charge of that? Can't you just do both?
I guess I could.
Yeah,
but
who's telling you to do Tuesdays or Thursdays? You just do both days.
You know, there are just not enough true crime stories coming from Florida.
Right. Yeah. I guess, yeah, okay. Well, let's talk about this. So, Dave, in all seriousness, right, domestic violence, very, very scary, okay? That in and of itself is very scary. But having an apparent domestic violence incident while trapped in a moving vehicle, that is one that is particularly dangerous. Have you seen a lot of cases like that before where you have alleged violence within a vehicle while someone's on the road?
I have never seen someone throw himself out of a car to evade police. I have seen people get in domestic violence in their cars, but this is the first time I've ever seen a driver of a vehicle throw himself out on the highway. Now, have I seen people try to escape by getting out of the car, trying to fall out of the car on the passenger side? Yes, but this is a first. But of course, we're talking about Florida, and we're always used to firsts here. But this guy is in for a whole lot of hurt because not only can you see the scars on his face from dropping out of a car at high speed on a highway, but he's also going to face some serious felonies.
Yeah, this mugshot is brutal. It is brutal. And I think the big thing that as we go through this is he's lucky to be alive, and everyone else in that car is lucky to be alive. So how did it happen? So when deputies found the car, they turned on their lights and their sirens to try to get Searcy to pull over, right? But apparently, Searcy wasn't having it. He allegedly kept on driving. And then suddenly, the driver's side door opens and Searcy jumps out. The car is still moving. So deputies, they stop to help Searcy, take him into custody, but it's up to the wife to climb over the console into the driver's seat, and she stops the car. Hero, it's a miracle. When the deputies caught up to her, they saw that she had injuries to her face, which was consistent with being in some sort of altercation with her husband. But Dave, the fact that she's okay, the kids are okay, you know, first of all, I'll get to the charges in a second, but that's a miracle in and of itself. And it made me wonder, the first thing, could he have been charged with attempted murder here?
It depends on the facts. He wasn't. And so they're thinking that he didn't try to kill anyone. He was just trying to evade. In fact, that's what he's been charged with, fleeing or attempting to elude a law enforcement officer. And it wasn't for driving. It was for jumping out of the car at a high speed. But as far as attempted murder, I would think he'd need more. Yeah, I think he'd need more than that. You'd have to show that he intentionally tried to steer the car to the side of the road. I mean, he jumped out to save himself. Thankfully, his wife was able to get them to safety. I can tell you, though, if God forbid someone had died in there, yes, he would have been charged with something more, a manslaughter, perhaps a murder. So he's lucky that no one died.
What was the thought process? Where did he think he was going to go? Expect the deputies to just keep following the car, that they didn't see him jump out? That is the thought process of someone I don't know if we can really make sense of, but what do you think the thought process was?
You're trying to get me in the mind of someone who will throw himself out of a car who on the high-speed freeway. He is lucky that the cops did see him, because if they didn't see him, they could have driven over him. Yeah. And I've seen that happen where people fall off a motorcycle, for example, and then cars just one after the next just roll over that person. And that's such a tragedy. Now, the thing is, in this part of Florida, it's rural. And so you don't have tons of traffic like you do in the urban areas of Florida, like Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach. And then he would have been toast. But because it's a rural highway, I guess he's thinking that he could just somehow survive it, barrel roll, and then run away and not get hit by other cars. He's lucky he didn't.
Yeah, I do wonder if his defense will be, I just fell out of the car. I don't know if that's something he's going to go with, but let's talk about this a little bit more. So paramedics, they checked the family out on scene. There are no serious injuries that were reported, thankfully. And according to the sheriff's office, Searcy's wife told investigators that she had asked her husband repeatedly to pull over and let her and the children out of the car. He allegedly refused. Now, Searcy's wife told deputies that this family of five had recently moved from Louisiana to Florida. They were heading back to Louisiana when things went haywire. And by the way, we checked out Searcy's criminal record in Louisiana, found something pretty interesting. He was in court in Richland Parish on domestic violence charges. Yeah, according to parish court records, Searcy was arrested for domestic abuse battery on March 15th of this year. Charges were officially filed a month later. He entered a plea of not guilty, and it appears that that case is still ongoing. But that is not his only domestic violence case in Richland Parish. In 2021, Searcy was charged with domestic abuse battery, child endangerment. He ended up entering a guilty plea in 2022 to an amended charge of domestic abuse battery first offense. He was given a suspended jail sentence of 6 months, had to spend 2 years on probation, and the rules of his probation included paying fines and court costs, enrolling in and completing the batterer's intervention program, undergoing a mental health evaluation, following the treatment plan that the counselor gave him. He also wasn't allowed to possess a firearm. Dave, really disturbing history, but would that Louisiana guilty plea have any bearing on his current Florida case?
Yes, Florida law generally allows prosecutors to use out-of-state convictions to upgrade charges when it comes to domestic violence, as long as the law in the other state here, Louisiana, is substantially similar to Florida's law. So it depends on the specific law that he pled guilty to and how similar that is to our domestic violence law. But I would think that we're going to use that in Florida as an aggravator, because otherwise first-time domestic violence can be a misdemeanor. Here, he's being charged with the domestic battery as a misdemeanor, but they could change that now that they're getting access to his records in Louisiana.
By the way, how was he out, right? If he had that completed case in Louisiana and then a pending case in Louisiana that came after, I don't know the full details of either one of those cases or what the rule is in Louisiana or what the pretrial release rules are in Louisiana, but does it seem strange to you that if he had this conviction and then he has this other domestic violence charge earlier this year, how is it that he was out? How is it that he was allowed to be with his family and traveling to Florida and coming back?
There's always the assumption of release. Like that is the default. You're going to get released pending trial unless you're a threat to the community, you're a threat to witnesses, or you have a likelihood of fleeing, or if there's a murder charge, for example, that pretty much will ensure that you're staying behind bars pending trial. But here, domestic violence, you'll get out. The exception to that is that if you are released on bail, bond, and you commit another crime, then you're going right back in. But here, he pled guilty, served his time, and then he has another pending case, but he got bail for that. And then the new case is in Florida. So it is possible that the judge, there could be a motion to revoke his bail because he was out on bail on the previous matter while he got picked up again for a similar crime in Florida. If that's the fact pattern, then he could be ultimately sent back to jail.
Let's talk about what he's currently facing in Florida, because according to a news release from the Washington County Sheriff's Office, Searcy was transported to jail on 7 charges: tampering with or harassing a witness, domestic violence battery, fleeing or attempting to elude a law enforcement officer, resisting arrest without violence, child abuse, false imprisonment, and driving while license suspended or revoked. The last one is obviously the least serious considering everything else he's facing. But I mean, I look at those charges, Dave, it pretty much aligns with the fact pattern or the alleged fact pattern that I laid out. What charges stand out to you the most?
Well, the domestic battery, to me, because of the conversation we've had, right now it's just a misdemeanor, punishable by up to 1 year in jail. But if he's had other domestic violence cases that where he's pled guilty or found guilty, then that could be upgraded to a felony. I think the Florida officials are still going to get all the information from Louisiana to find out all about this guy. The other one is, the false imprisonment is interesting because that shows that the kids, they wanted him to stop, and he kept driving. It wasn't like they wanted to get out of the moving car. They wanted him to stop. So I can see how a defense lawyer may say, what do you want him to do? He's still driving. They're on a car trip. He's still moving in the direction that they're intending. They just got in a fight and they're screaming and yelling. So perhaps that is a vulnerability for the prosecution. Maybe that's a crime where the defense could say, Your Honor, that's not the right charge here.
In your experience, do prosecutors throw everything they possibly can throw and then worry about, later on which of the charges they're actually going to move forward with at trial?
Yeah. Like tampering with witness here. The tampering is when he found out that his child called 911 and then slapped the child in the face. Right. So there's a bunch of things here that are clearly just. Child abuse. I mean, just the act of slapping the child in the face. Fleeing and eluding is, because he threw himself out of the car. So they're going to load him up. And just because, though, that these are third-degree felonies punishable by up to 5 years in prison doesn't mean he's going to get it. They're going to look at his rap sheet and other factors to decide what he scores. But he is set for prison time. This guy, I think, is going to the Department of Corrections upstate. It looks like he needs to because he's a repeat offender.
Well, does this go to trial, or do you think that they will try to work out some kind of plea? Because one of the things that I was thinking about is, do you want to take this to trial? I would imagine the children would have to be witnesses, right?
Well, you have the 911 call, and you have the wife, who's an adult, in the car. So the children may not have to testify. The prosecutors may not need the children. And so maybe they won't have to be traumatized again. If you're prosecutors, you always try to see if there's a deal. I mean, it's just part of the business. There's an adage that says, in the halls of justice, a lot of justice is done in the halls. And so that's what could happen here. There could be a plea deal. If you're the defense lawyer, I think you'd want it, because when you get pretrial publicity like this, especially in a rural community where everyone knows everyone, it's not good for the defendant. So this is something where both sides may have an interest in settling.
What do you think he's looking at in terms of prison time, whether he takes some sort of plea, what would be offered to him, or if he takes this to trial, let's presume on all of those charges, what do you think he would get?
Well, the maximum right now, based on the charges, is 22 years and 60 days. He would never get that. And I don't know what he scores. I have to look at the score sheet and his priors and all the aggravating factors to make an estimation. But if I were to guess, I would say that if he goes to trial and found guilty, the judge, I think, would give him, up to 5 years. I don't think he's getting more than that. And if he pleads guilty in advance, I think that he would probably get 2 years in prison. He'd have to go upstate to prison. But even though he scores way more than that, even though the maximum is way more than that, that's just a maximum. And very few people would get that.
Is there a defense of, we talk about in the law, if you have an extreme emotional disturbance, if you're in the heat of passion, we talk about heat of passion, right? In homicide cases, the classic example is you walk in, see your spouse cheating, you take a gun out immediately and shoot both of them. But in this kind of fact pattern, as we're trying to understand if the allegations are true, why you would continue to move fast in the car, not let anyone out, jump out of the car, is there any room for a defense attorney in Florida to argue some sort of mental health defense? I'm not saying that's what they'll do, but an emotional disturbance of some kind, there was a fight going on, heat of passion, anything like that, is that possible?
Well, he'll argue that, his lawyer will argue that to try to mitigate the penalty. But as far as the statutes, the elements, it doesn't matter if you've had mental distress. It's still not a defense to domestic battery or child abuse or fleeing and eluding. But it can help when it comes to the penalty phase. I think the thing that's going to trouble the judge the most and the community is the jumping out of the car, leaving your family there to possibly die. And I think that's where a case that factor alone, I think, ensures that he's going upstate to prison.
Just really think about the family here. I mean, my gosh, thankfully they're okay. This could have been a much different story. And as they try to navigate what happened, they also have to navigate what life is going to be like as a completely changed family and what almost happened. It's just really, really hard to be thinking about. But Dave Aronberg, thank you for breaking it down for us. And I hope everybody can check out your Substack on either Tuesdays or Thursdays, or maybe Tuesdays and Thursdays in an ideal world, but appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I put out videos every day, so check it out any day that ends with a Y.
There you go. There you go. Dave, appreciate it.
Thank you, Jesse.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me on X or Instagram. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.